I now have the privilege of inviting Mr. D. Shivakumar, Chairman and CEO of PepsiCo India Holdings and past President IMA, to give a presentation on the theme.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for being here. Rekha and Ima asked me to talk for about 20-25 minutes on setting the scene on changing times, reinventing the India story. And that's what I aim to do over the next 20 minutes. First, I want to start by saying a lot has been said about India. A lot will be said about India. I am an optimist, and I believe that we have achieved some degree of progress, and we have a lot more to achieve over the next many years. I have handled over 20 categories in my professional life as a manager, and a lot of my learnings is from that aspect of the consumer and how the system works. So the structure I'm going to follow for you. Somebody? Oh, you haven't set up? Sorry, I thought it was set up. I don't need it. That's it. I can use this, right? Okay. Thank you. So the structure I'm going to follow for you is, over the last 67 years, if you look from 1947 to today, what's been some of the progress we've made on some of the key parameters? I'll use various data points to give you a sense of how much progress we've made and yet how much more needs to be done. And then I have 6 thoughts for you in terms of what is the philosophy change I believe we need to have. This has nothing to do with politics, it has nothing to do with government. This is my personal view of what India could do in a future world. First up, if you look at population, okay, our population has more than grown 4 times in the last 60 odd years. But what's important is not the population, but the percentage living under the poverty line. That's come down to a third now. It used to be about 70-80% in the 50s. Today, it's much more like 33%. Still not good enough. So have we achieved progress in terms of moving forward? Yes. But do we need a lot more to do in terms of addressing the people below the poverty line? Almost certainly. Let's look at infrastructure. If you look at infrastructure, roads, we've had a 10-fold growth in roads in the last 60 years, a 10-fold growth. From an airport about 90 years ago, we are today at about 125 airports. From one big port at the time of independence, today we have 13 big ports. So in terms of this infrastructure progress, have we made some definite moves? Almost certainly yes. So that's progress for you in this country. Business schools, we virtually had nothing in 1947. Today we have the largest number of business schools in the world at about 2,500. The world has about 12,000 or 13,000 business schools. So in terms of education, you can see a dramatic progress has been made, but still a lot more needs to be done. Let's look at women. A lot of people have talked a lot about women. I think Chairman Mao of China said the sky is held up by half the world, which is full of women. Let's look at the top line, people in the workforce. Today there are about 400 odd million people in the workforce. Women in the workforce has remained roughly static. So in 1983, we had 102 million women in the workforce. In 1991, 118 million. And in 2011, 123 million. That's not much progress. So if we really want to move forward, very clearly identifying and getting women into the workforce is a big one. However, on literacy, in 1947, just under 9% of women in this country were literate. Today, 67 years later, 74% are literate. And we have found in every single industry and category, direct correlation between women's literacy and the progress of a district in terms of health, education, and all the other practices. So this has to clearly be a reinvention idea as we move forward. Let's look at telecom, possibly the biggest success story of all the infrastructure that I've talked about. In 8 years, we've had an 8-fold increase in subscriber base. In 8 years ago, we had about 120 million subscribers. Today, we have close to 900 million. If there's one thing which has changed the landscape and completely collapsed the hierarchy and the social strata in this country, it's telecom. This has been one of the biggest successes, and I believe on the back of this, you'll see a lot more progress in reinventing India. Cities, towns, and villages. When we got independence, we had 17 provinces. 1991, we had 23 big cities, 3,700 towns. Today, we have 72 cities, 8,000 towns, 600,000 villages. Some of you would argue that a lot of our cities and a lot of our towns are challenged today in terms of infrastructure, and you're absolutely right. What are the aspirational products? In 1947, when we got independence, the Hercules bicycle was the most aspirational product. You see all the pictures of 1947 over the bridges, etc., is Hercules bicycle. 1991, the biggest aspirational product was the Maruti car. Started in 1984, a huge success. Okay, today also a market leader. In today's world, it's everything to do with personal technology. That's the big aspirational product now. Be it a tablet, be it a cell phone, be it wearables, everything to do with personal technology is the real aspirational product today. So the consumers in terms of aspirations have come a very long way. So what are my thoughts on rethinking the philosophy as we move forward for India? My first thought, for years we've said small is beautiful. For years I've worked with many small companies as part of a large multinational. They were all a part of our ecosystem. I believe it is not small versus big. We've had, I think, a mistaken notion that small competes with big. No. It's fast which competes with slow, not small versus big. My personal proposal in terms of the philosophy forward should be an ecosystem of small and big. That's what will really make the difference in a future we really need to move forward with. And many companies which do this and many countries which do this have really done remarkably well. That's my first submission to you. My second submission to you, India is a scale country. We should not forget it. India is no longer a niche country. 25 years ago, most categories were niche, and we would wonder when those categories would grow. Today, India is a scale country. So we have to think of scale and not niche. Number two, India has about 5,600 listed companies. 2/3 of them are family-owned companies. 2/3 of the companies listed are family-owned. Now, here's the difference. We really have to move from an era of jugaad and doing something together to really focusing on brand, innovation, and design. We have to move up the value chain. If we don't move up the value chain, that scale which we have will get commoditized very quickly. And we cannot afford for that to get commoditized. These 66% of family companies, if they want to compete on a global stage, they cannot be running on jugaad. They have to be working on brand, innovation, and design. That's what will make the real big difference in terms of reinventing India and the products and services that it has to offer. Third is a philosophy again for each and every one of us in this room. What is our attitude? Quite often when you look at media, quite often when you look at commentary, everything is a half glass full attitude. My question to all of us, each and every one of us, including myself on stage here, should our attitude be that the glass is half empty, or the attitude should be, I will fill the rest in? So I think each and every one of us has a responsibility to say, this country has to reinvent itself if we reinvent our attitude to put something back there, as opposed to perennially complaining that the glass is half full. We have to stop being a nation of complainers and mourners. We have to start looking at what can I do to make the difference to this glass half full to glass full. So that's an attitude question for reinvention. Next, 90% of land in this country is disputed. Okay, so if we want industry, if we want anything to be done, I think a very simple thing, we need to reform this. Reinvention of India will happen when this is sorted out. Okay, and I'm sure that the government will sort it out. Successive governments have talked about it, but this is an area, otherwise this will always be challenged and we will not have much reinvention. Number 5, teachers. For me, a lot of my teachers were role models, and I'm sure the same is true for a number of you in this room. Teachers and what we do to teachers. We cannot afford to pay the kind of monies we pay our teachers today. How do you get high quality students? How do you get high quality education if you're not taking care of the most important element in that chain, which is the teacher. Okay, so first, teachers, we need to invest in teachers if we want to reinvent this great country. Second, we need to provide skills for jobs. A lot of the universities, a lot of the medical colleges, a lot of the engineering colleges have given us degrees. I think we need to go well beyond that. The skills required for today's success is very different from just having a degree. I think we need to invest far more in skill building in this country, and I'm really happy to see a number of people do that. And finally, I think the emphasis on women and what we help women achieve in this country has to change. Okay, so women, all of us talk about being a very important element of our future story, but I think we need to commit much more if we want to reinvent this great country. And finally, I would say smart cities. And a lot of people talk of GDP in the context of a country. I believe when I look at India data itself, the future of India is actually in the growth of its smart cities. It's not in the growth of the country. So if I were to take the top 10 cities in this country, they will grow at 10% plus GDP over the next 10 years. So focusing on that is very, very important. Okay, that will involve a lot of technology. And I think the current government has.
At 11:25. Thank you.